how we can get started with data science, with programming, with Python. Okay, so let me just share my screen and just go by few important things which is there. Okay, so we'll start by keywords and identifier. Anyone who has an idea of what is a keyword and identifier in any of the programming language? Yeah. So you see, it's just like any other programming language. Keywords are the reserved words. Okay. That is like you cannot use it in general as a variable name. Okay. Those are reserved name. So you cannot use it as a your variable name or a function name or any other identifier. Okay. So Python also has the same thing. Python has a list of keyword list. Okay. So if you see that, right, there's a library. First, let me just give you how does it look like. Okay. So this is your ID, as you see, right? This is your Jupyter Notebook ID. Okay, anyone can see it, right? So if you have installed it, the ID looks like this. So this ID is running on localhost in your local machine. Okay, and then you have the port number. Okay, and then you'll have the directory where you want to navigate in this Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so this is your Jupyter Notebook. This is the structure it will show. This is the tree structure that it shows. Okay, now if you go to the right side, you can see this new, right? So this new shows one thing, which is your Python 3 IPy kernel. Okay, so what is a kernel? Okay, kernel is nothing but a computational engine. Okay, so that will execute your code. Okay, so there could be many kernels, like suppose you have a kernel specifically for Python. Okay, you have kernel for Scala and R as well. Okay, if you have multiple Python version, you can have multiple IPy kernel here. Okay, so these, what you see it here, right? Now what I can do is you can just create a notebook here and I'll say this. Okay, new. So this is what this is your notebook, which is called as a Jupyter notebook. Okay, untitled, you see this is the name. So if you want, you can just rename this as your notebook. Let's say I'm just calling it as your first notebook. Okay, I'm just giving the different terminologies. So one that you see it here, right, this we call it as a cell. Okay, this is your cell. As you can see, right, this is your cell. Now if I want to run any code in this, let's say I'm just writing a simple print command. Okay, the syntax for this is just write print anything that you want to print it, just give it in a single or double quotes. So let's say I say hello September batch. Okay, we have people joining in just a minute. Okay, so hello September batch, and I just run it. And how do we run it? In Jupyter Notebook, the shortcut to run it is using Shift and Enter. Okay, and if you are using Mac, it is Shift Return. Okay, so when you press Shift Return, this is going to run the cell. Okay, now you'd see this output. This is the output for this cell 1. Okay, on the left hand side that you see it, right, this 1, this is the execution time this cell is executed. See, I ran it again, it is showing 2. So it means this cell is executed twice. Okay, that's the first thing. Now let's go to this. So you see a drop down here, right? This shows the different types of cell. So this cell can have multiple types. One that you already show was a code. That means you are going to write some programming code into it that will get executed for the kernel. Okay, for what? Kernel. And this notebook that I have created is for, remember, I created this for what? I created this for your IPy kernel. Remember this? Python 3. Okay, so this is going to execute that. So this is a code type of cell. If you see the next thing, which is your markdown cell. Okay, so I can convert any of these cell to a markdown cell. Let's say I'm selecting this, I'm just changing this to markdown. Okay, and what is the use for this markdown? Generally what happens is when you start developing models or you start developing your analysis for any business problem, you won't be just writing a particular piece of programming. Okay, you'll also be writing your analysis. Okay, let's say, So analysis, let's say for example, in the last class, I was talking about a model where you are actually helping Google classify whether the email is a spam or a ham. Okay. And you want to write those analysis here. So what you can do is, I'll just give an example. So this hash that you see it, right? If you see, right, this hash symbol will help you control the size of these comments. Not exactly comments. These are actually markdown content. So I'll just write this down. Let's say I'm writing analysis. If you give multiple hash, it will just decrease down. So it is inversely proportional. It will decrease down the text size. Okay. So I can just write analysis for spam classification. Okay. And press shift enter. You see this, right? This came, when I ran this cell, shift enter, it wrote it as if it is a text content. Okay. So what you can do is you can also use all those tags which you see it on HTMLs like break, right? Let's say I'm just writing this as an example. This is first line, and then you can just use these PR break lines, or you have other headings and other body, all those tags in HTML, you can use that. Okay, this supports it. Okay, let's say this is second, you can do that and just run. So as if when you saw that I used break, right, it came to the second line. Okay, even if you write it here, I think it should come to here, right? So this is what kind of cell? This is a markdown of cell, markdown type cell. So what happens is when you do certain, let's say I'm writing all the codes here in all these cells to classify an email as a spam or a ham. Okay, and then you wrote certain analysis, then again you wrote some code. This is how the notebook looks like. Okay, so this was a markdown type of cell. Okay, you have RB and raw NB convert. This type of cell is to convert, like you can have a cell executed on multiple other programming languages as well, and you can convert that, right? So you can convert something that is written on one language or one kernel to other. Okay, and then you have heading. So when you insert a heading cell, right, you can have like this. So this you can give it as a heading. Okay, so I just converted and I just print. So heading, you see it, right? This is way bigger in size. This is somewhat similar to the markdown cell only, but it comes with this one hash symbols and these are bigger. Okay, so I'll just change it back to the code and just come back here. Okay, now you saw this kernel. Okay, now kernel is a computational engine. So what happens, this cell you say, right, let's say I'm just giving one example. I'm writing x is equal to 2. Okay, and I just ran this and I'm just printing x. Either you can print x, or if you just write x, right, it is going to print the value. Okay, now you see, right, the code or the execution that happened in the first cell, the values are carried to the second one as well. Okay, so what happens, this complete execution of multiple cell, you can consider this like it's a single line of execution. Whatever you are executing on the previous lines, let's say you have a function definition or something, it will be carried to the next cell. You'll have so you can think of this like this is your first logic of code and this is your second part of logic of code, and these two will be tied. It's not something that will get lost. If you assign some variable here, you'll have it here. Okay, what happens when you restart the kernel? So it is like shutting down your system. Okay, when you restart your kernel, everything that is there in the memory will get lost. So when I restart the kernel here, you see, right, restarting the kernel, all the variable will be lost. So if I just restart it here, you see it got restarted and you have it back running. Okay, now I run X. You see what is the error? The very important thing for you to learn in this is always read the errors and learn the different kinds of errors. So throughout the course, I'll specifically make mistakes to get these errors. Okay, so that you understand what these errors are. so that it is easy for you to debug. So if you see this, right, it's showing as a name error. That means it's a name error where your X is not defined. Why X is not defined? I have already defined X here, but I didn't run the cell after I restarted the kernel. So when I restarted the kernel, this type what was there in the memory went off. Okay. So when you restart it, it goes up. Okay. Now there are a few shortcuts which are very useful. I'll just go to that. If you want to insert a cell below what you are writing it, you just press escape B. So there is a cell that gets inserted just below your running cell. When you press escape A, so there is a cell that gets inserted just above. So it is like A and B is above and below. That's it. That's how you learn. So there are three shortcuts you learned. One is how do you run your cell? Shift Enter, escape A and escape B just to insert the cells above and below your current cell. Okay. Kernel you understood. You can shut down the kernel. You can reconnect the kernel. You can interrupt while you are executing a particular run. Okay. Suppose your cell is running for 5-10 minutes. You want to interrupt and stop it. Then you can just interrupt the kernel and the execution will stop. Okay. The same button, you can see it here. This one is to stop it here. You can run the cell here. This up and down arrow is to move the cell position up and down. Okay. This is to restart the kernel. Okay. These are to add, cut, copy, paste, all these things. You can just explore this. Okay. I'm just giving few others you can just explore. Okay. There are options to run all the cell, or there are times where you want that everything that is below this cell should be executed. So like I am on this cell, this is called the active cell route right now because this is selected, right? The one you see it highlighted. So if I just say run all below, so every cell below will be executed, or all above. So every cell above will be executed. Let's say I'm here, I'm just run all above. So these two got executed. Okay. Others are several self-explanatory things. You can just go ahead and explore. Okay, this is how your IDE looks like. Okay. Now, let me go to the basic and just cover up the core Python, so that because people are from different background, if they've not learned about programming. So what I'll do is I'll just go through a basic of programming, okay, in Python. So as I was telling that there are different keywords to it, okay. So Python also has keywords. Now you see this statement import, okay, import. Why this keyword is used? Okay, import is to get some library in your current kernel. Okay, so when I say import keyword, what happens is this kernel environment which is there running for your notebook, this library comes here. Okay, this is how you will be doing it for any third-party libraries. Okay, there will be libraries. Suppose you have library for deep learning, NLP, and all those. As you might have heard about scikit-learn, right? So all those library, what you can do is just write import keyword and import the library name. So that gets imported. So when I do that, in this you have a variable called KW list. So keyword list. So I'm just printing that keyword list. So if you see, right, these are the reserved words for Python. I cannot use this. So when I want to use, remember I was using X is equal to what? Just there's someone in the meeting coming, right? Okay. So I cannot just use it like break. Suppose I'm just using break is equal to 2. Remember I was using X is equal to 2. I cannot use it. Why? I cannot use it. There is a syntax error to this. Okay. Let me just use others as well as say assert is equal to 2. You see, there's a syntax error here. Let's say I'm using assert 1 is equal to 2. It ran. Why? Because assert is a reserved keyword for Python. You cannot use it for any variable, okay, nor as a function. So these were the reserved keywords, okay. And then next is your identifier. Okay, identifier is the what? Identifier is something that you give it to any class, function, variable. Okay, so any name that you want to give. How do you identify a particular resource? Okay, that's nothing but your identifier. Okay, so there are like any other programming language, you cannot give any name. Okay, you cannot give any name. Suppose you have aria, right? So aria, I cannot, if aria is a reserved keyword for Python, I cannot give aria any kind of variable value. Okay, not as a definition, also function definition also. Okay, so let's see this. So there are certain rules to it. So identifiers, you can have a combination of your alphabetic, okay, uppercase or lowercase, and numbers or underscore. Okay, that combination you can use. Identifier name cannot start with a digit. You cannot start with, like, you cannot have it like this: 1a is equal to 2. I cannot use it. Okay, it cannot start with a numerical value. Okay, and all the reserved word that I already showed you, you cannot use that as an identifier. So you see this global, anything that comes to green, right? If you see, right, this is the way to actually identify it. Whenever you are coding and you see this name becomes green, that means it's a reserved keyword for Python. You cannot use that for naming any of your conventions. Okay, so identifier cannot be used. You cannot use these special symbols as well. Okay, cool. So these were the keywords. Let's go to the variables. Okay, so what's a variable? Variable is nothing but your, in the memory, you give some value and there is a variable name that you associate it with, so that you can actually fetch the value. Okay, when you give those names, you actually fetch the exact values which is there in the memory. Okay, so how do you assign in Python? You just give an equal sign, your string, whether it's a float value or it's a number, you just give it like this. When you want to make an multiple assignments, let's say I'm actually assigning it to 3 values here, A, B, and C. So you can just write it in one line, A as A, comma B, comma C as these values. Okay. So in any other, as we progresses, you have these in mind. Okay, this will make you cannot have, like, you will be doing it in 3 multiple line, 4 multiple lines, especially wasting your space. Okay, you use these smart techniques to make your assignments. Okay, so if you see where, if you want to print the address of where the variable is, you can use it using id. So these are self-explanatory. Okay, the next thing is a data type. Okay, so every value that is there in the Python, that has a data type, as you might have, a few of you have seen it in other programming language as well. Okay, just like that, you will have a data type associated. So you have data types like numbers, booleans, strings. You have list, tuple, set, dictionary, all these things. Okay, so let's go it by one. This is important because this is where you will have your data. When you get data from outside, you will have to assign it to certain data structures. Okay, and each of these data structure will have some data type. Okay, so the very good thing about Python is that, remember, in Java or any other programming language, you have to say the data type that you want for the variable based on the value that you will be giving. So if you remember, in Java, you will have something like this: int a is equal to 5, right? So you'll have to mention the data type. Python, what happens is you just give the value. Okay, so when you just give the value, based on the value, the data type is automatically taken by the Python. Okay, it will automatically learn that, okay, this is an integer, so the data type of a is integer. If you see, right, I just assigned 5 and I'm printing the data type. How do you print data type? You just use type. Type is also a keyword. Remember, this is in green, right? So you just print it up. Now I assign 2.5 and I'm just printing the type. You see, right, this is a type of float based on the value that I gave. This is in decimal. Okay. Now, if you see, this is a complex number, right? A plus ij. So if you see this, I'm just printing the type in this, right? It's a complex number. Okay. Next thing, you have boolean. You can just give true and false. Remember this is very important for someone who's programming in Python for the first time. This is true. If you give this as true, then this is wrong. Okay, you cannot have this as true. This is specifically, right? Big people make this mistake. This will not be identified. So if I just write a is equal to okay, and I'm just printing A, it will tell that, okay, true is where it is defined because it is taking as a variable, not as a Boolean value. Okay. So you have to take it as T caps, true or false. You'll have F in capital. Okay. 1 second. This is false. Okay. Just keep it this in mind. A lot of people make mistakes. Okay, and you start getting, you see that, right? It is getting name error, means it is identifying true as some variable which is not defined. Okay. Now, next is string. So this is a string, right? This is a string and you're just printing this string. Okay. Remember one thing that you remember about string is these are what? These are immutable, right? So once you assign it, you cannot just change the value of this, right? So this is an immutable string. You print this value here, this. And next thing that you are going to learn is slicing. This is very important. Okay. You can slice a part of string. What do you mean by slicing? Cutting down certain section of. You'll see this not only on string with other data structure as well. So if you see, right, S5 colon till end, right? So this is how you do it. You have S here, okay? So you give a bracket. Then first thing that you give is your start index. Where do you want to start with? The indexing in this starts with 0. So you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay. So I want to start with 1. Okay. Then you give colon, and then at what index you want to end. It is just like cutting a slice of pizza. Okay. Or any other bread. Okay. So you start with something and then you end it and take that slice out. So I want to take the slice out from 1. So let's say 3. Okay. And I just print it. So if you see this from 1 to 3, it is printing what? HI. And where is HI? This HI, right? So 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3. Last index will not be considered. Okay. If I don't give 3 here and I just miss it, that means it is telling to print till the end. When you don't give it, it is till the end.